Welcome to EZRA Asks, where we tackle bold questions shaping leadership and work. I'm your host today, Devin Haberkorn from our North American Solutions team here at EZRA. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Melanie Steinbach, our newest EZRA Advisory Board member. And here's the problem that we're going to be tackling today. Your team is using AI. They're getting faster, they're automating more, but are they asking the right questions or just accepting the first answer? So with today's tension, where AI can generate anything in seconds, most leaders focus on adoption. But the real game isn't who uses AI the fastest, it's who's staying curious enough to use it right. So excited to get into conversation today, where we are going to be exploring the overall question of when AI is commoditizing answers, what happens to leaders who forget how to ask the right questions and getting into some of the human differentiators that are truly going to set organizations apart. Let's get into it. Welcome to EZRA Asks, and I am so excited to be joined by Melanie Steinbach, or as we know and love her at EZRA as Mel. So welcome, Melanie.
Thank you.
You are the former CPO for MasterClass, for Cameo, VP, Chief Talent Officer at McDonald. Such an exciting history in your career so far, and thrilled to have you on the EZRA Advisory Board here. Would love to, just have you say hello and introduce yourself with maybe some fun facts to kick us off.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, you've already hit 3 of my most recent positions. Professionally, I think the thing that I've always found is the through line through my career is really helping people solve business problems. I got to do that in executive search for 15 years, and I have spent the last 13 years doing that on the corporate side as a chief people officer. It's been really fascinating, particularly given all of the changes that we've experienced as a society in the past even 5 years. So really love that I've had the opportunity to do that. And then personally, my family is the thing that keeps me grounded. My husband and my 2 daughters. I hope they listen to this at some point so they get to hear the shout out.
And I think one thing I forgot to call out in your career highlights, which we could have a whole another entire podcast on, is formerly board of the Court of Master Sommeliers. So that can be a conversation for a different time, maybe over a glass of wine.
Literally, we should definitely do it over a glass of wine. That was just an incredible honor. If you are ever in a restaurant, please be nice to your sommelier. They have studied so hard, and to be part of that organization as they were navigating cultural change and really coming to terms with what their values needed to be for the future, it was really an opportunity of a lifetime.
Oh, well, I will hold you accountable for that glass of wine to
Please
chat
do.
more. And today we're really going to be talking about the topic of AI, performance, curiosity, and what that means for organizations. But before we get into those topics, if you will entertain me, I had a few rapid fire questions just to kick us off and get warmed up here in the hot seat.
Let's do it.
So a couple of hot seat questions. What would be one word that you would use to describe Chicago, your home?
Well, we're recording this in March, so I'm going to call it bipolar because we can't decide what our weather should be.
All right. And then I know you love to travel for food is one of your passions. So when you are at a restaurant, what is your hierarchy? Quality of food, quality of service, or the ambiance?
Quality of service can really make or break a dining experience to me. I remember the service more than I remember the food. I love food deeply. I remember the service the most.
Service, certainly memorable. And then I was going to have a question of on time or early, but being with you these last few days, I just automatically know that you are an early person. So
I'm an early person.
Over or under 10 minutes being early?
I'm laughing because I am really an early person. If you show up to something on time, I think you're kind of a little late. So definitely more than 10 minutes early. By the way, a lot of that is because Chicago is very trafficky, which could have been another word I could have used to describe Chicago. And so I always err on the side of caution.
That is fair. Very good philosophy to have. And then what is one task that you wish AI could take over for you? What's the one thing that you wish you could completely delegate your life to for AI?
Chopping onions.
Never getting the mascara.
Oh my
tears again
gosh.
from the onions. Ugh.
Cannot stand chopping onions. I don't like it staying on my fingers. Don't like the crying. I like the whole thing. If AI could figure out how to chop onions for me, that would be amazing.
AI, if you're listening, you have your brief. And then when people are using AI created outputs, should they be cited that they were created by AI?
Oh, this is not a rapid fire question, Devin. This is like something that I have actually been thinking a lot about. Like, do I write that some of my things are Mel with Claude? I don't know.
Don't know.
I think my instinct is that we will start to cite it, mainly because people will want to know if something is fully human. I think like in video, that is becoming like a real discussion point. But in the written word, I think it's still a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, that's fair. And in hindsight, yeah, maybe not the best rapid fire where that could be its own topic, which is probably just like a good segue as we start to then get into kind of deeper the topic for today and what we're going to talk about. One place that I kind of wanted to start us off with, you are one of our newest EZRA Advisory Board members, but you also have a very long and deep-seated history with EZRA. So for those that do not know, McDonald's was EZRA's very first client, where in all of our EZRA offices, we have dedicated rooms for some of our most memorable clients. So we even have a Raven phone booth, which I think was the very first EZRA participant. And you were the individual on the other side of that made it happen. So yeah, anything you just want to share a little bit about your backstory from EZRA, from being our first client to on our advisory board?
Yes. Well, the other thing I think is there's also a Ronald conference room that has French fries all over it, which I also deeply love. It is really an honor to be part of EZRA at every stage of its evolution so far. And I think there's only greater opportunity for EZRA in the future. When I first came across EZRA, when EZRA was first introduced to me, we really had this opportunity to take a program that was working well with very traditional ways of approaching development. We were bringing people together from all over the world to learn in a cohort. And then we were sending them back into their markets with individual executive coaches. And that was working super well, but we wanted to scale it. And we didn't think that we could do that with that model, with that traditional model. And so when EZRA came into the frame for us and said, we can do this in a more flexible way, in a way that is actually going to make it easier for your participants to meet with their coaches, because they're going to be able to do it when they're out in the field, which is really important for McDonald's leaders. It was a slam dunk, and it has become such an important part of that company, but many others. And so when the opportunity was presented to me to join the advisory board, I just thought this was a way that I could give back to a company that has given so much to so many coachees around the world. So it's been so exciting being part of this next growth era for EZRA. The thing I'm most excited about is how EZRA has taken that core idea of democratizing coaching and now just expanded it into all of these different offerings to meet different clients where they are.
And I think right now, what we're seeing as a big moment for clients right now is obviously performing and leading in an AI world. What does that look like being more AI enabled? So where I want to take the conversation next into this idea of like curiosity at work in an AI powered world. We need that curiosity in there when it comes to these AI tools versus just having it help us be productive and having the outputs. Like, where's that human curiosity in here to really help us move us forward? And not losing that like playfulness, that experimentation to really learn and adapt to use it in the best way possible. What does that mean for organizations, for leaders, for individuals, and how we can really maintain that edge? And My question for you is, I understand that this concept of curiosity was also very big for your time at McDonald's. So when you were building culture at McDonald's, how did you keep curiosity as an internal value or skill there? How did that come through for you?
There's so many things that you just said that I'd love to dig into. We'll start with curiosity, but I do want to go to this idea of play, because I think that is also something that we should continue to build and highlight. But let's start with curiosity, because what we found at McDonald's when I was there and we were trying to renovate our culture was that our curiosity had gotten a little stale. We tended to look internally at what we thought we could optimize internally, rather than really looking externally to see what were some of the big flavor trends that were happening. What were some of the different ways that people were seeking convenience? McDonald's was at the forefront of convenience, and that was a huge part of the brand and of the business. But there were all of these different ways that customers were experiencing convenience, and McDonald's had been a little too insular at the time to get to the forefront of those. And so we started to really drive curiosity as a muscle. We named it as one of the key leadership behaviors that we expected every leader to demonstrate. We gave examples of where we wanted that to be visible. We talked about it as, when you are leading a team, you need to demonstrate curiosity to understand what motivates all of your team members. Ask your team what's getting in the way of their performance. So really linking it to talent proficiency. We embedded it in our strategic proficiency expectations. You need to understand what's going on with your customers. You need to understand all of the dynamics going on in your local markets. You need to understand macroeconomics, what are going on, and what is going to affect and impact the performance of your function or of your set of restaurants. So really embedding it there, and then also embedding it in execution proficiency. While I was at McDonald's, there was so much incredible experimentation with delivery and partnering with Uber Eats, with doing some really interesting thing and looking at how you could modernize the kitchen to make it easier for the crew in the restaurants to be more customer facing. And so even within execution proficiency, we really started to layer in that expectation for curiosity. And I think you have seen, McDonald's company performance has really been the beneficiary of that for the past 5 years.
And I guess now fast forward into more of an AI world and what curiosity means there. What does that then mean for you now for how critical and important curiosity, playfulness, and experimentation is for organizations at this point in time?
I think it is the make or break. And EZRA and you on your team, Devin, have done some really interesting work around the curiosity and discernment. And to me, those two traits really go hand in hand. The thing that I am always telling people around curiosity is, okay, the way that most AI platforms are set up is they start with, you have to ask a question. But to me, the magic happens with the second question, with going a little bit deeper. And I think that, really encouraging people to have that next level curiosity, to not just can you tell me blah, 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 but once you get the answer to really start to interact with it. And that's where some of that playfulness, I think, comes in. We think of playful as being just fun loving. But if you think about it, you play a sport, you play an instrument, that requires practice and really going over certain things. It's drills, it is, doing chords when you're playing an instrument. That level of dedication, I think, is what we need in this curiosity. It's that playing with purpose.
And just kind of a little bit on that, do you then also see a difference in generational trends where one idea that I might have is that our younger generations are actually going to be really good at this because they do play, they do experiment, they're doing that kind of practice, which doesn't maybe feel like practice in the moment, versus more executives and people that have been in the organizations for longer have lost that element. It's going there, you ask it the one question, okay, great, I tick the box and I'm using AI. Are you seeing generational differences for how curiosity comes to life?
I can see it go both ways. So I think you're right. On the more senior executives, their curiosity, their kind of neuroplasticity is a little bit less biologically, but also because they have been doing something a certain way for a really long time. And they are not AI native. And so this does, it is challenging for them. That being said, they also know what great looks like because they do have all of these years of experience. And so they tend to be a little bit better of when they get an answer back of saying, no, that's not right, right? That's close, but not accurate. And I think you're right that the younger generations are much more experimental. They're curious about how they can get AI to be entrenched in all of their, all of the different components of their tasks, and whether those be professional or personal. But they don't have all of those reps that some of the older generation has to be able to say, to determine the difference between close enough and accurate.
Yeah. With that, I think it's starting to get into is a little bit of the work that our broader EZRA Labs team has done that you were alluding to. So our broader EZRA Labs team really at the forefront for our thought leadership, behavioral science, really was looking at the trends that we're seeing in organizations right now, where if everyone is using AI, what are the real true human differentiators in this that are going to set apart the organizations that are succeeding in this versus are not? And those do come down to that skill around discernment, having that critical thinking to know what good looks like, almost that judgment category. The curiosity is top of mind in there too, to be curious in how you're using it. Humility as well, and appreciating maybe what got you here won't get you there, and like having to have that humility and like, what skills do I need for the future? When don't I know the answers? That shift from knowing all the answers to how are you then working through others? And then the last element that is just so critical is around the concept of connection. Maybe people are being curious and experimental in their own work within their own teams, but how is that cascading across the organization, across the business? So these 4 human differentiators of curiosity, discernment, humility, and connection are just so critical right now. And that's what our behavioral science team, looking at the research, has come up with. And curious for any initial reactions you have for that framing.
I think they are so spot on. They are, when I first saw that research, I breathed a little sigh of relief that there's still going to be a need for people and culture teams around for the next, foreseeable future. I do think that work is going to change, but it's like thinking that just because you have internet access, you're going to win as a company. Well, that's not the case because most companies have internet access now. And I think we are getting to a point where most companies are going to be using AI tools within their company. And so what will continue to be the differentiator are the humans that are directing and interacting with those AI tools. And so then the next level question is, well, okay, so what do we need to develop in those humans so that they can extend that competitive advantage in interaction with the AI tools? And I think the work that the EZRA Labs team has done on this really, to me, makes a lot of logical sense. The one that I think people don't talk about enough is connection. It has always been so central to my personal leadership that my job as a leader is knowledge transfer. Yes, my job is to get information from my team, but more importantly, my job is to give information to my team. And when any leader is in a meeting, they're gathering some piece of information that's going to be helpful to a member of their team, whether it's on a project that they're working on or team that they are interacting with. And I've always seen my job as being like, how quickly can I get that information transferred to them? I think that is now what we are, we're going to see the best leaders really going to amplify that skill. And so that connection piece, I think, is super important.
Definitely one not to lose in all of this, where everything else kind of breaks apart if we don't have that connection.
Well, and I think it has been strained over the past 5 years, right? If you think about what we have already had to endure over the past 5 years with COVID and all of this remote working. When I was first told that I was going to be working from home for 8 weeks and I was not going to see my team, it was like one of 3 times I've ever cried at work. And I cried because I couldn't imagine keeping the strong connection that I had with my team if it was going to be remote. Now, fast forward 5 years, like we have all learned how to continue to build connection through, through Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, whatever it is, virtually. And I think now we have this another layer that is going to be really forcing us to think differently about it. We used to also build connection by like working on a project deeply together. Well, if AI is doing a lot of that heavy lifting, is that going to strain our connection? Like, are we going to have to find another way to really build that and strengthen that for the future?
What is the duty and responsibility of organizations in this time to help their people versus what should be the responsibility and duty of individuals themselves in this period?
When I lie awake at night, this is the question on my mind. And I think about it from a societal impact perspective. And I think about so let's talk a little bit about the role of the company. I think, at least in the US, and I know we're talking to a global audience here, but in the US, where you work also dictates the level of healthcare you have. Whether you are in one industry or another, there's a lot of differences in compensation. Where you are geographically, that matters as well. But I think companies have really become a very important part of, and large employers in particular, are a really integral part of our society to keep some of those, that societal infrastructure that we all need. And I worry that if we have massive job displacement across every industry, what that will do to the overall psyche of some of our fellow citizens. Work is not just a place where you go so you have health care. Work is also a place where you go so you feel like you are contributing to something beyond yourself. Work has a lot of like mattering components for people. And so I think as employers are thinking about, their responsibility, their duty of care to their employees, I understand that their shareholders are really holding them accountable for their own performance. But at some point, we all have to start thinking collectively because of these societal impacts. And I do go back to COVID, which is when, any one company could have said, oh, you know what? We're actually going to keep our people coming into the office so that we can extend competitive advantage. But they didn't. They said, we're all going to lock arms and we're going to keep people safe by, making sure that people are being in the safest environments that they can be. And for essential workers, we're going to do whatever we can to keep them as safe as possible. I think that like collective understanding that we all had a duty of care, both to our individual employees, but to the larger society, is something I am hoping is going to happen on the AI side as well. But to the other part of your question, what is the individual, responsibility in all of this? When I was at McDonald's, we had a philosophy on career development, which was your path is yours to own, but you don't walk it alone. And I think that philosophy holds for your question, no one can make you be better at AI other than yourself. I mean, the company can provide you the opportunities, they can provide you the tools, but at the end of the day, whether or not you choose to play with it in a way that really gets you to a level of absorption, which is another great word coming out of the EZRA team, moving from adoption to absorption. Until you get there, I think, that really is incumbent on you as an individual.
Couldn't agree more, just for like your own accountability, so you ensure that you're not left behind in this process as well too. So not waiting for your organizations to be responsible for training, where you can be empowered yourself, but then organizations meeting that moment and making sure you're equipped with the tools to then have a culture and environment where it's safe to experiment, explore, and have that safety as well too, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, look, all of the AI platforms have a free option. Everyone can be playing with those. On discernment, everyone can be like deciding where they are going to get information. Honestly, like people should go to museums and learn like, oh, this is what a world-class artist of this genre of art looks like. Go like watch incredible films so you can see that when you actively seek out excellence, it enhances that discernment muscle. And so I think there are a lot of things that individuals can be doing outside of work, both with AI and then also with other cultural institutions or other forms of media that I think will help them across a lot of the dimensions that we've already talked about.
Yeah, I really like that. Seeking excellent inspiration out there. It's just so powerful. And I guess with all this framing, if we are seeing that AI is clearly going to make us more productive, but whether or not the performance of organizations is really going to have an impact is now coming down to this leadership story. Where do you see coaching as a way to then help in that leadership story to help organizations really differentiate themselves in this scenario?
To me, like I really do believe everyone would be better with a coach, like everyone in the world would be better with a coach. I really do believe that. And the reason that I believe that is because I think as humans, regardless of our learning mode, we do learn better when it's more personalized. And that is what a coach can do. And so I think particularly in times of change and disruption, coaches become those incredible translators to say, where the coachee can say, this is what our company is saying. This is my job. These are my fears. You tell me, like, help me work through what this means for me, how I can show up differently, how I can show up better. And I think once people understand the implications for themselves, they will adopt more, the performance will rise. But I do think that a lot of people are skipping this step right now. I think a lot of people are saying, we're all in on AI. And that's coming from leaders, and their employees are saying, I don't know what that means. Like, what does it mean that we're all in on AI? Does that mean that like I no longer can use like a search browser and I have to use like an AI platform? Or does it mean that you're trying to get me to like work myself out of a job? And so when there is that confusion and fear, change stalls. We know that. We know that change does not move quickly in an environment of fear. Yeah. And so to me, like the leadership brief is, how do you make things as clear as possible? How do you make the expectations of what you're asking people to do differently as clear as possible? And then how do you use coaching to help all of these individuals who are being faced with tremendous disruption? How do you use coaching to help personalize that experience for them?
From what you're sharing, it kind of reminds me of what you were talking about earlier for how much value you put on that concept of the connection in this, and like having that clear communication, making sure people are not operating on these different AI islands, like how people are actually talking together, having that consistency. And with that kind of thinking and point of view of where you see coaching playing a role, obviously for EZRA, we are designed, and our whole goal and mission is to really truly help democratize access for coaching, where we equally feel that everyone will be better with a coach. But realistically, we know that that's not always possible for organizations. So if someone had to start somewhere in your organization, where would you recommend as a starting point for coaching to start to have an impact?
This kind of feels like Sophie's choice, Devin. I don't I don't love this question. I know. I don't love this question because on the one hand, you could say like, look, the leaders of all of your largest teams, like if you do that, it will have an outsized impact. But I think about the levels of translation, right? From the CEO saying we're all in on AI, the CEO's direct reports probably have a good sense of what that means. Those direct reports have an okay sense. I think once you get down to the manager level, like the sense of what we're all in on AI means, I think that gets real muddy. And helping that population get clearer, I think helps move the organization faster. But if you said to me, I'm sorry, Mel, you can only choose one, I think I would choose that VP level. So the two down from the CEO. Starting
to at least then role model it, having that alignment to really create that ripple effect then within the organizations as a starting point.
I think so. And because the question was framed around driving performance, right? And so you think about the elements that get in the way of performance. I really do believe people want to do a good job at work. And I think that there are elements that get in the way of that. And the first element that gets in the way of that is actually not knowing what their goals and expectations are. And so I think coaching can really help with that. Giving them the questions to ask, giving them a different way to reflect on those. Final answer, VPs.
Final answer, VPs. With flexibility to dabble
I would
elsewhere.
Say, with a real interest in having it expand very quickly to a larger population. I just honestly, I really do believe that if people know what is expected of them, they will do a better job. Coaching is such an incredibly powerful way to help them with that. So that's why.
Yeah. And if I'm kind of thinking it from how we're seeing it play out from EZRA and different stories with our clients and coaches, sure, you can go through a training, you can look at a e-learning, but a coach really is going to help you think about how are you being curious in this? Asking the right questions to prompt that spark, helping you think about that connection element. Or for me, when I think about where the coach could really uniquely add value to really help with that performance is that humility front too. So I resonate with that idea of more VPs and senior individuals, where I actually think this humility differentiator is actually probably one of the biggest places for them right now, where they have been used to their entire careers having the answers.
Totally.
Now, knowledge is everywhere. So what's helping them in that moment? So I see coaching as uniquely really kind of being that level up for that curiosity thinking and that humility mindset for executives.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, my last role was at MasterClass, which is a fantastic organization where the mission is to unlock human potential by inspiring a learning lifestyle in everyone. And I told the CEO when I joined that could be my personal mission. To inspire a learning lifestyle in everyone, because I really do believe that leaders are better when they are learners versus knowers. And you see this in companies like Microsoft, where Satya Nadella has very famously said, we don't want to be know-it-alls, we want to be learn-it-alls. And I think the leaders that I have seen be the most adaptable, be the most flexible, and then have sustained performance are ones that deeply identify with this humility and curiosity, right? And so now we're talking about all of the different elements that the EZRA Labs team surfaced, but in different combinations. And so now I would go to that combination of curiosity and humility, right? It is, I want to learn. And I am humble enough, I have the humility to say, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I mean, you've seen me do that a couple times here already. And the truth is, if anyone says they know definitively right now in so many of the areas of AI, they are deluding themselves because everything is changing so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that combination of humility and curiosity to me is really, really important right now.
This is just very top of mind, where after last night, EZRA, our team, hosted a dinner here in Chicago with other HR and talent leaders in this area. And there's an interesting dinner conversation that I was part of where it was talking about, well, actually, in the organization that was shared, like, this is actually the biggest challenge, where people are terrified at that executive level to admit, I don't know. They keep sharing stories about why it's so important for AI, but they're not truly adopting it. They're not actually being curious. Like, they're afraid to show that humility. And we're all kind of talking about this fear of like AI replacing jobs, more junior levels, mid levels of the organization. But it was a question that was flipped of like, well, what if AI could replace the executive, where it's not managers managing agents, but actually an AI agent as an executive of an organization managing people? Like, curious for any reactions for that, to almost flip that script of that pyramid of an AI agent leading humans.
I would love to see how an AI agent executive handles Wall Street analysts and activist shareholders. I don't know that my brain can get there yet for a large company, but I will tell you, I had a conversation with someone earlier this week who said they fired themselves as CEO and they put an AI agent in charge. They built a digital twin. I think it's really interesting as an input to decision making.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get there yet on, is it going to really align, inspire, and motivate, thousands of employees along a mission. But I do think that executive discomfort with, oh my gosh, everything that I've known, that I've valued, like all of the shortcuts that I've used are now either everyone has them, and so they're no longer making me differentiated and special, or they are completely useless to everyone, and I don't know if I'm going to be excellent anymore. I think there is a lot of that crisis of confidence.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I always advise executives on is you have to actively practice unlearning as much as you practice learning. And unlearning is very difficult. It requires that humility to say, I have done it this way, and I'm going to pull myself back from that. Right? I'm going to get myself out of that rut. I'm going to get myself out of that habit, and I'm going to build a new one. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah. And for me, that's kind of where the power of coaching is. Like, I struggle to kind of see any individual kind of getting there in a whole group setting too, of like needing that safe space to then be able to talk it through a coach. What are the challenges? What are the fears? Helping you work through that and having that accountability. All those different elements just feel so unique for coaching, of like what that could then bring into that experience for that deep personalization, for kind of the context that kind of really requires that level of personalization to work through it, versus a one size fits all training to help people get there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, we always say it's lonely at the top. It's lonely at the top because, for a lot of reasons, but I think one of them is that there's this expectation that once you're at the top, you are this like oracle on high, just like giving answers down, into the rest of the organization. And that is why I think there are so many coaches for executives to help them, like, because they need someone that they can confidentially share. I don't know what I'm doing in this area, or I'm uncertain. Forget don't know. Maybe you have a hunch, but you're uncertain, and you have to project certainty, and a coach can really help them work through that. But in my experience, employees really respond well to, I'm learning this too. Here's what I've learned. If you have any tips for me, I'd love to hear them from you. Like, that statement from an executive to a team, I think would be really powerful in this moment.
And then just on that topic then too, for the value that a coach can then bring into that kind of conversation in this scenario, do you think it always has to be a human coach that is doing that? Or what's where does the AI coach fit into this? So like human versus AI coach, any point of view there for where that can be adding value?
So when I was at MasterClass, we had rolled out a really interesting role play product. And we found that there was a group of people that really preferred doing that role play with the AI versus a human, even though we gave that AI like very human, like some of the MasterClass instructors, we gave them those characteristics and that language.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that they preferred the AI in some scenarios was because they felt it wasn't judging them.
Mm.
I've held on to that as a thing to consider. You know, even with a coach that you believe is non-judgmental and that is there, like, and we've talked a lot about, you know, how powerful it is to feel like you have someone in your corner, and a coach can really serve that purpose. But, you know, I think that as humans, we are afraid to be judged by other humans.
Mm-hmm.
And there are places where I think an AI coach can be really helpful in a non-judgmental way. The caveats on that are that sometimes you need someone to be a little judgmental on you to guide you into the right direction, right? Like if someone told me now to, you know, if I like asked an AI coach, like, should I shave my head and dye it green? And they said, yes, that's a great idea. Like, I kind of need someone to say, thank you, you know, let's take a beat.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there is a role for AI coaching. I think like AI coaching in like quick, maybe even more like functional things. What do you think I should do in this scenario with this, you know, this person who's also an analyst, whatever, if it's a little bit more functional. But in the elements that are really, that would benefit from a lot of human nuance, I still think human coaching is better.
And I might even replace that kind of term like judgment. Like sometimes you need that judgment in there. Is just the challenge that comes through it. Like for task-based or like role play scenarios, that can be a great place to then have that AI element, but that human coach is uniquely going to challenge you in that moment, unlike how AI would probably do it. Or if AI was challenging you, would you listen to it? Would you just ignore it and stop engaging with it? So there's something with that idea of like that challenge element that is just so unique with the human coach, their ability to really bring in fresh perspectives and ideas, and just that core accountability that you get. How many times might people snooze your alarm or be able to ignore when you're engaging with AI and tech, but it's really hard to ignore another person on the other side who's holding up that mirror for you.
And I think there's a little bit more accountability with a human coach, although I need to think about that a little bit more. Like I guess you could set it up so that the AI coach like provided some accountability actions, but my hunch is that humans would provide a little bit more accountability.
Yeah. I don't think actually would have to even be an either or. It would be a both. How can we be sharp and smart with technology to help drive that accountability thinking and having a system be really easy for that, but then like a human on the other side too. So I think that's where I would go with that too, where actually you could probably have power of both right there come together.
I think that is where the magic is really going to happen. I mean, there are this idea that an AI coach could be always on 24/7. Like that's pretty interesting, you know, like if you're at 10 o'clock at night and you like have a quick question, you don't want to disrupt your human coach or wake them up or whatever, but like an AI coach might give you a quick answer, which you could then validate the next day with your human coach. Hey, I was talking to my AI coach. I got this answer. I just want to pressure test that with you. Like based on what you know about me, what are we thinking? What, you know, how would you challenge me to think about that further?
Yeah, I really like that too, kind of blending it together, being timely when you need it. And for anyone who's listening who's new to EZRA, great news is that you do get both with EZRA for any of our human coaching solutions that can really help scale across different levels, use cases, and needs. You always have the option to be turning on Kai, which is our AI performance companion, to be helping in those moments. So sharing that for anyone who's new, just for how EZRA is approaching that, where I couldn't agree more, where the two are just so powerful together there.
Just to like go back to our very first question, this is why I continue to be so energized by being part of EZRA's journey, right? The evolution of having a coach on your phone to now having a human coach accessible and an AI coach. I love watching the progress that the company's made. It's so cool.
It's certainly an exciting time for us, for sure. And then a few final reflections that I had while we've got you here in the hot seat. We've talked a lot about curiosity, how it can really help unlock leadership, how growth and performance really need to be coexisting here and how that's so critical. What are these human skills that AI can't replace? So with all of that, like what's the one piece of advice that you have for leaders or teams right now who are really trying to show up differently this quarter as they're navigating AI adoption?
My advice for leaders is stop pretending you know all the answers. You absolutely do not. You cannot. We have not faced this particular technological transformation ever before. The same way that you had no idea what COVID was going to bring, you really don't know what this is going to do to your organization. Stop pretending. When you stop pretending, your believability, your trust levels with your team are going to soar. They believe that you are lying to them when you tell them that you know all of the answers. And that's not serving anyone. So like my advice to leaders is stop pretending that you have all of the answers. I think the other thing that I would advise leaders is then the follow-up to that is learn in public. Yes, it is, it's scary to learn a new thing in public. I have recently taken up golf. Going to the driving range is very terrifying for me because everyone has to see how bad I am. But there's no way for me to get better other than practicing. And I don't have a driving range at my house, so I have to go and do it in public. And I think that same idea holds for leaders in this time, right? Learning in public is going to help your team see that you're trying. It's going to see your colleagues see that, like, maybe they'll get ideas from you. It's going to see your boss see that you're role modeling this progress, and like really trying to hold yourself accountable for progress. I just think stop pretending you have all the answers and learn in public are the two things that I would tell leaders to do right now.
Yeah. And on that learn in public side, it makes me think what you're talking about of like seeing others who are excellent at what they're doing. If you're learning in public, you're also observing others in public, and just like, what does that then create too? So really powerful message and final words of advice for leaders out there. And then is there anything that's been top of mind that you wish I would have asked you today that I did not on this topic of leading in a world of AI?
The one thing we've talked about, the amount of change. We've talked about the human impacts. I think the thing that is also really interesting for me is speed. We haven't really talked about pace so much. And I do think that the pace is something that is worth a mention. And here's why. When I was growing up as a professional, I had to earn my knowledge. It took time. It took exposure. It took access. Now, pretty much any entry level, anyone with access to AI could gain my knowledge, but they're not going to have to earn it. And I think there's a difference in that. By earning it, I learned all of that discernment that we've talked so much about, but it also, like, I learned it at a pace that I could really absorb it and that I could really apply it. And I worry that we're giving people knowledge so quickly, but humans, at my table last night, someone very wisely said, the brain is a muscle and it needs to be worked. But if we are just giving people knowledge so quickly, how do we manage the human pace for knowledge absorption and change? And I think that is something that as leaders, we're going to be needing to pay a lot of attention to, like managing that we are peddling one side very quickly, the knowledge access, but the kind of knowledge absorption and processing and application is likely to happen at a slower pace. And I think as leaders, we're going to have to be managing that.
Yeah, very interesting. Oh, well, thank you so much, Mel. It's been wonderful to chat all things AI. And I think one of the things that I'm certainly taking from this conversation is that these categories of discernment, humility, curiosity, and connection are certainly not soft skills, but truly going to be the differentiators right now for organizations. And it was a joy to have you here. Would love to hear from others how you're finding the conversation and the other questions or reflections. And until the next EZRA Asks, thank you so much.
Thanks, Devin.